And who wants to sleep on a bed of bumpy rocks if you can sleep, on a comfortable bed, right? I mean, to a certain extent, this is normal, this is natural, it's not a problem. It's not that we should force ourselves to experience negative, painful things as some sort of discipline. I remember a friend of mine she was German, but she lived in France for a long time at a Buddhist retreat center. And she said that there was a man who came on retreat one time, and he locked himself in his retreat room, and he forced himself to sit in the full lotus position, so his feet all the way up here on both sides, and he would sit for hours and hours and hours until he was literally screaming with pain. And it was freaking the other people out. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with this guy? And they finally found out what he was doing, and so he would be in his room screaming because he was in so much pain, and someone would come knock on the door and say, you really don't have to do that. But my suspicion is that this man had it in his head, no matter how horrible and painful it is, I must sit in the full lotus position. Nonsense. It's not better. Causing ourselves pain is not better. We know this from the Buddha's life story. He lived this life of luxury, and then he went into the forest, and other Indian ascetics of the time, people wandering in the forest and meditating, they were doing all sorts of things to cause extra pain and suffering. And so the Buddha stopped eating. The story is that he was only eating 1 grain of rice a day until he was literally skin and bones, and he could put his hand on his stomach but feel his spine. Have you seen statues or pictures of the Buddha like this? Yeah? Pretty freaky looking, right? Well, the Buddha realized finally, this is no way to enlightenment. This is useless. I'm just destroying my body. So he taught the middle way. Now, the middle way means many different things, but in this sense, the middle way means don't become a hedonist. Don't completely indulge yourself in every pleasure there is available, because that's not a way to happiness. But don't harm yourself in the pursuit of enlightenment either, because that's useless too. So then the Buddha started eating. He had a normal diet, a basically normal diet. For someone of his time, the Buddha ate probably once a day. But most people in India at that time probably didn't even get to eat once a day. So he actually had a good diet for someone of his time. So this is what we do. We chase after happiness in all sorts of crazy ways. That in itself is suffering, because we get something we want and it slips through our fingers. It wears off. The happiness wears off, or we lose it, or it doesn't make us happy even though we thought it would, and we suffer. And then, of course, we experience all kinds of bad things, and we go, ugh, and we run away from it. We try to avoid it. Here was an example I was thinking of before the talk today. So, for this first one, getting positive experiences and avoiding negative ones, who here has ever told a little white lie to avoid something? Maybe having lunch with your mother-in-law, or something like that. You don't want to do something like, oh, no, I really don't. I'm sorry, I don't feel good today. People do that. People do that. My sister was, she was working at a place, and someone had called in sick, and then he was found out shopping somewhere later with his daughter. Oops. So we do these things to avoid circumstances that we don't want, but sometimes it blows up in our face, and we get a lot of suffering from it. So anyway, this is about attachment and aversion. So we do all of these crazy things in order to find happiness, in order to avoid suffering, and that in itself is suffering. But then we're also planting the seeds for more suffering later through negative behavior, trying to get what we want and avoid what we don't. There's some new movie out now, I think it's called Margin Call. Have you heard of it? It's about the economic crisis that started in 2007, 2008. It's this company, and somebody realizes that they have these investments on their books. It's this investment company, buying and selling stocks and things. And somebody realizes that, oh no, if just this one set of stocks or whatever it is loses just 25% of its value, the whole company will collapse. So then they're up all night deciding what to do or something, and then the next day they They decide to not tell anyone, not tell any of the other companies what the problem is, and they just sell it all to save their company. But then they tell the people who are selling everything, they say, we need you to do this today. You've come in early this morning, we need you to do this today. You're probably destroying your career, though, to do it. So we're going to give you a couple $1 million if you're successful in destroying your career today. I mean, just think of all the negative karma that they're creating there by lying to people and dumping these bad investments that caused other companies to go under. This kind of stuff happened. I don't know if this particular scenario happened, but this kind of thing happens. It happens all the time, probably. Somebody's selling something, they know it's bad, but they sell it anyway. Maybe some of you have experienced this. You bought something and it's really obvious later on. The salesperson had to know it was junk, but they stuck you with it.
That usually is the stock.
Stock, but things too, physical things too.
They want to, they know it, they lost money, but they want to create, to let people know it's like, it seems like the hype of, something.
Yeah.
So they can sell this right away. And
yeah, they want to get rid of it. So they tell you, it's great, it's great. You should buy it. Uh-oh, it's worth nothing. The first time I bought a car, I was 26 years old. I bought a used car. And I asked directly, are there any problems with this car? Twice. The person selling it to me said, no, it's a great car. I took it out for a little drive with him, just a couple of minutes and back, and it seemed fine. It seemed like it ran great. But then I had a long drive home. I took a taxi there, and then I had a long drive home. While I was driving home, the engine started to overheat. So then I took it into the mechanic, and it turned out that the radiator had to be replaced. And he's like, the mechanic said, there's no way these people didn't, the people who sold it to you, there's no way they didn't know this. They lied to me. I swore then I would never buy another used car. The only used car I bought was from my parents. And they never had a problem with it. I knew this car. They'd had it for years. It was the one that I came to Dieu Phap with when I first came here. And within a few months, it started falling apart. But that's not my parents' fault. It was just an old car. So then I leased a new one. I will never, ever buy another used car again. I have horrible karma when it comes to used cars. So this kind of thing happens to us, right? But the people who are doing it are creating negative karma. So we have to be really careful about, the way that we can use this as a tool is just to remember this, be mindful of this teaching. And then as we go about our day-to-day lives, notice when you're attracted to something or when you're feeling like you want to push something away, notice that. And then be really careful, really aware of your motivation in how you respond to that. What am I feeling the impulse to do in order to get what I want and avoid what I don't want? Because there's this little, voice, sort of, it's not even always conscious underneath. It's telling us, do this, don't do that. Here's how you can get what you want. Here's how you can avoid what you don't want. Try to listen to that voice, that inner voice that's telling you, do this, don't do that. And then ask yourself, is this impulse to do this or not do that? Is that in accordance with the Buddha's teachings? Is it in line with the Buddha's teachings or not? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Listen to that carefully. And then remember, if I listen to this voice that's telling me to be selfish, to lie, to cheat, or whatever, to any degree, that if I go in that direction, I'm planting the seeds for more suffering in the future. This is how we can use this teaching. So I say here, towards the bottom of this page, a Dharma practitioner recognizes the impermanence of sensory pleasures and does not get angry when suffering comes. A Dharma practitioner gives praise to those who are praiseworthy and accepts blame where blame is due. I had an experience with a boss of mine. I may have told you this story before. This is many years ago, around the time that I first became a monk. He was really angry with me about something that I absolutely knew was not my fault. And at first, I started not really to argue with him, but to say, well, but you need to understand. I was calm. He got so angry. He started cursing at me. He slammed a book or a folder down on his desk. He was yelling. He was really upset. And I just stopped and I said, you know, in whatever way I have been a source of frustration for you, I really am sorry. And I meant it when I said it. I wasn't just saying it. I didn't say it with like an angry tone. You know, sometimes people say, well, I'm sorry. And you know that they don't mean it because they're angry when they say it, right? I really meant it. And he just was shocked out of his anger. He just stopped and kind of looked at me because people don't usually do that. It's amazing what can happen. It's amazing what can happen when you apply the Dharma. Even in that moment, I saw clearly, oh, okay, I knew this wasn't my fault. He wasn't going to hear it. So I just said, okay, I give up. And for both of us, in that moment, the suffering ended. The Dharma works. So then the last two sentences here. A Dharma practitioner is not concerned with fame and does not behave in disgraceful ways. If we don't chase after fame and we don't behave in disgraceful ways, we cause ourselves and others a whole lot less suffering. And then a Dharma practitioner engages in generosity and remains unattached when loss occurs. So this would be a perfect situation. When loss occurs, for example, completely not worrying about it, that would be the ideal. But the next time you lose something, just catch yourself. If you get angry or really upset or something, you want to blame somebody, catch that and at least avoid acting out. At least avoid yelling at somebody who doesn't deserve it. You know, avoid taking it out on other people, even if you're feeling bad inside, and just start from there. So this is the kind of person that we want to try and become. No one expects any of us to be that person 5 minutes from now. So this is, again, a tool that we can use and slowly apply it and slowly transform our minds. And then we will cause less suffering for ourselves and less suffering for others, and we will plant the seeds for positive karma for the future. Okay, so that's all I have to say today. So we were going to start with your story about your experience, back to this issue.
You said before that people in public school, yeah, they say that Buddha is down here and Krishna is up here. Yeah, it's true. Because I used to be in Catholic school for my child 12 years. And always in school, the sister, the nun, and the priest always said, oh, Jesus is always from heaven. The Buddha is like human beings. Buddha is not from heaven. Only Jesus is in heaven. And I always disagree, even if I was a little child. They am charged by the priest and the nuns that being stubborn and headstrong, because I don't believe in confession. I don't believe in Saint Mary to be virgin after having Jesus. I don't believe that after that we go either directly to hell or to heaven. I don't believe in that, and they can never convince me to believe in that.
I guess it's less surprising that was a Catholic school, because that was a religious school, but in public school, that's where it's particularly shocking. I suppose if there was a Buddhist school, we would be saying, well, Buddha's great. Maybe we wouldn't be saying Jesus is no good. I think that would be bad. I don't think a Buddhist school should ever do that, but a Buddhist school would be saying, well, Buddha's wonderful. So that's a little bit less shocking, given that it was a parochial school. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.